Hello there, and welcome to the Method Matter Show Beers on the Balcony. I'm your podcast host, Greg Kouwiloyan, founder and director for the Finance and Accounting Division. This show is purely centered around interviewing thought leaders across Australia and learning more about their past, present, and future. And today, I am very fortunate to be sharing a beer with Matthew Curtis, both client, philanthropist, and friend, who is the current director of the Financial Services Shared Service Division for Royal Melbourne and the Northwestern Mental Health. Matty, welcome to the show. How are you, pal?
Going great, thank you, Greg. Thank you for the invitation to join on this great podcast of yours.
Thank you, mate. It's an absolute pleasure, mate. And I'm very much looking forward to this. And I think that will cover a fair bit of ground. Now, for those of you who don't know Matt, Matt has worked in the payroll and payroll systems field for 18 years, the majority of which has been within the public health space. Matt has also been a part of a number of large SAP implementations and is currently overseeing the payroll, shared services, and outsourced teams, delivering pays to over 25,000 healthcare workers across 4 different hospitals. So definitely a high-profile role. Again, mate, like I said, we're very thankful for you being here. Now, before we do launch into the show, obviously being called Beers on the Balcony, clear to see, we're not on anyone's balcony, unfortunately, mate, but have you got a beer of choice to hand?
I sure do. I went my top shelf, which is a nice James Boag's Premium, nice Tasmanian waters. So that's today's beer of choice.
Good stuff, mate. Good stuff. I've gone a bit continental, mate. Do not judge me for this. Okay, I've gone for the Birra Moretti, a nice Italian beer. Okay, fruity and actually bought in New South Wales, to be honest. So and actually brewed by Heineken, but it definitely tastes like a little bit of sunshine, mate. So cheers, pal.
Cheers.
Awesome, mate. Great choice, mate. Now, let's launch into it, my friends. And like we said, the premise of this show is to learn about sort of past, present, and future. We've got a few questions that are more geared towards understanding a bit more about your story and any insights that you'd like to share with our community. Please, we would love to hear it.
Will do. Thank you.
Wonderful, mate. Now, all right, let's talk about inspirational influences, mate. Now, obviously, you know, to get to where you are, of course, it's a mean feat. So I was just going to ask you, who have been your sort of biggest and most inspiring influences growing up, and why were they so influential?
Well, other than James Bond, it's going to be a little bit of a boring kind of theme here, but it is my dad. I know a lot of, you know, probably males out there especially would probably say that, but whether mine's different or not, that's everyone's opinion, up to them to think about it. But really, I suppose uniquely, my dad was in the Defence Forces for 25 years, so was very loyal, had a purpose, worked really, really hard to get to where he got to, all the while, you know, as I said, 25 years of service, as well as earning a Order of Australia medal. So in reflecting back, kind of thinking back, well, you know, sometimes late nights and hard work and some weekends missing for what purpose? Well, the Defence Forces. Then thinking about that now, going, well, actually, it probably has helped shape me who I am. I am a very loyal person. I've been with Royal Melbourne Hospital for over 10 years. Hardworking, working for a purpose. You know, we've got frontline workers that we're really helping out here. So yeah, that's really my answer to that one.
I love that, mate. That's awesome. And you're absolutely right, matey. I mean, the people that you spend most time with when you're growing up, they're obviously going to take inspiration from work ethic or how they carry themselves, which nowadays can be very much overrated. I think, especially when you look at the recruitment component, when you're trying to look at values and look at behaviors. If someone's looking to break into that, break into the into an entry level role where they haven't got the experience, well, you have to look at appetite for growth. You have to look at behavior. You have to look at commitment. So I think those sort of aspects are so important, mate. So thank you for sharing, mate. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of the soft skills, as well as taught me how to have fun on the job too. It's not just all serious and straight down the line. You can be a leader and have fun along the way and bring people with you.
Yeah. Again, nowadays, especially now, I'd say that having fun on the job, sometimes fun's a bit of a loose term. It's sort of, what the hell does fun mean when you're working? It wouldn't be called work if it was meant to be fun every single day. But seeking the wins in maybe the smallest of things is quite important. And I think that you've made an absolutely banging point there around making sure that whatever that looks like, however small that token may be, seek that smile during the day for that sense of achievement and enjoy what you do.
That's it. That's right. Yes.
Brilliant,
exactly.
Mate.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate that. Failures. Let's have a look at this. Most business leaders and thought leaders would probably say that failure would always lead to something more inspirational or lead to bigger learnings. What would you say? What have you learned? I mean, what would you say would be one of your biggest failures as such, and maybe what was the biggest token of learning from that?
As you know, Greg, I've never had a failure, so I can't really.
You are perfect in every aspect. I know that, mate. I know
that. There is a lot along the way, and don't just look at failures as part of your job, or you weren't successful in this job or that job. Sometimes it's to do with relationships too. Relationships fracture and relationships fall down, and that's a failure. I think in my reflections, I do look at some of the work failures, but more I reflect more on the relationship failures, because I find having relationships throughout and networking and making sure those really are really strong and come together really well are more important than sometimes, because people fail all the time at work, and you expect that from entry level right up to the top. So making failures along the way is going to happen to everyone, but as long as you learn from them. But I think more importantly, trying to keep relationships, and not all the time you want to gonna be friends with everyone. I'm not saying that one bit, but sometimes you're gonna hate your manager, but you've got to try and resolve it somehow and work through it together. Sometimes it doesn't work, and you got to learn from that and move on and go, okay, how can I for the next challenging relationship, how can I make it work?
Yeah, mate, I think you make a really, really good point. I think there's nothing wrong with failure, especially when you're starting out. You're going to fail constantly. There's going to be challenging aspects or a role you don't know. If it does come down to the relationship management piece, you're absolutely right. I mean, one thing that I was taught very early on was to mirror behaviors, to look at body language, to try and find common ground, all those sort of things, which I probably take for granted now when I'm coaching and training other people. But nothing wrong with it. I mean, how else are you going to learn? It's just how it is nowadays. If you're going to be thrusted into a role where it's unfamiliar, you're going to fail. There's no doubt about that. And if it is a huge failure, right, take the tokens. What have we learned about it? How do we mitigate it next time around? What have we learned from this? What can we share? So we obviously don't have to come across it again. How do we get around it?
And I think if you take responsibility up front, and get on the front foot to get that going and go, hand up, this is why I went down this path, or this is why and how it happened, but I'm going to learn from this, and communicating that, it actually turns it into a positive, and leaders look at that and go, well, you actually identified that you did fail, and it sounds like you're not going to do it again. So you actually let me know that you have failed, rather than having to have the dire conversation about, uh-oh, here he comes.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's true. And we've all been there. We've definitely all been there for one reason or another. But you made a good point there, mate. It's about how we learn from it and how do we press forward and how do we get around it next time around.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant stuff, mate. And listen, I know that your industries obviously had a fair bit of change over the past couple of years. Obviously, try to mitigate what's been happening both pandemic-wide and economically as well. How would you say that your organization has maybe shaped your industry over the past sort of couple of years, whether it's more socioeconomic, whether it is more sort of financial, or maybe technological?
Yep. So Royal Melbourne Hospital, one of the busiest hospitals in Australia, one of the biggest hospitals in Victoria, one of the leading hospitals. So we are seen as a leader in the industry already. The pandemic happened and everyone turned to the leading hospitals and said, okay, what are you going to do? The Royal Melbourne Hospital is a beast. It is a massive organisation and a lot of governance and structure and committees, and takes a long time to really turn that Titanic of a ship. What I've seen over the last 18 months is an agile workforce that I'd never thought I would say Royal Melbourne Hospital is agile. I thought startup companies and tech companies and things like that, they're agile, and project management has an agile style, but never Royal Melbourne Hospital. It's too structured, and there's 160 years of history there. But we had no other choice other than to be agile. No choice. Helped set up the vaccination centre at the Melbourne Convention Centre. We do pays for Western Health as well. So we were helping set up rosters for field hospitals out at the showgrounds. And some things would change overnight, going, here's a pop-up clinic from tomorrow, and it was at 5 o'clock the night before, going, we need a roster, up you get, and off you go. And it's like, okay, you just take that and go, rather than being, well, have you spoken to this person, this person, this person, this committee, and that? Sometimes you just got to pull the trigger and you go. So I think without all the other bells and whistles of what Royal Melbourne's been able to achieve in terms of clinical practice and advancing healthcare and research, it's the agile nature that I've seen that really surprised me.
Did you find there was maybe a reluctance to change or to adapt to a new way of working, or do you feel like the workforce, due to the circumstances, just embraced it?
I think those early months, there was a lot of confusion and a lot of hesitancy and not knowing. But once the clinicians and the senior medical staff started to say, all right, WHO are saying this, we really need to go into pandemic mode. That's when you hear that from your senior medical leaders, is when you think, okay, things have to change and have to change rapidly. And I got to say that was led from executives below. So I'm very pleased and proud to say I still work for the Royal Melbourne Hospital, being
it's such a
part of that.
Story. It's such a success story, because you are right. Smaller, more nimble, malleable companies with a smaller workforce might be able to, change from maybe a waterfall model, maybe to a more traditional agile model. But when you've got an institution of scale with legacy systems, how do you apply those ethics? It's so difficult. And do you see the value in terms of moving more to that sort of agile workforce or the agile way of thinking?
Definitely. And you made a really good point. It was hard because aging and really old infrastructure systems, processes, we really had to keep it simple, stupid. to be able to get a lot of these things through in a very, very, very short frame of mind. So, yeah, I do think that going forward, it's going to stay like this. And I think it's for the best as well that we are now an agile organisation, whereas I didn't think I'd ever be able to say that 2 years ago.
Brilliant, mate. That's good. It's good. And I suppose following on from that, I know that the obviously mental health has always been quite topical, but even more so in the past couple of years when people are now working remotely and forced to work from home. And I know that for us in those early days, front end of last year, it was all new. It was exciting to a degree. There was a bit of over communication happening and more a bit of validation that people were working when they were working from home. And I know that a lot of that is obviously built on trust, but for me personally, good days and bad days. You know, I suppose mental health was for me quite topical, but at the same time probably wasn't front and center. When you're homeschooling 2 little ones, you're trying to get your day-to-day work, you're trying to be present at home, trying to stay motivated, trying to not eat bars of chocolate every 5 minutes and drink a bottle of wine every night. It has its difficulties. And I know for us, we had to kind of set up some strategies and at least some support plans to help people through those difficult times. But with an organisation or an institution of its size, the Royal Melbourne, how did you combat or support mental health in the workplace?
I got a two-pronged answer to that one. One at a local level within payroll, and one as an organisational level. And being a public hospital, majority of staff are still working on site. So they didn't have the, in early days, luxury of working from home, being frontline workers, or you've got to be present at the hospital. So luckily enough, Royal Melbourne Hospital is also part of Northwest Mental Health. So there's some really talented, good mental health clinicians that are available within the hospital. The hospital took it really, really seriously. Really seriously. They set up a whole wellbeing team within people and culture. The wellbeing team was put up a hotline, so staff could call it at any time if they've got any issues, questions, if they're feeling down, need support, if managers needed support with their staff. There was a whole team of mental health clinicians that were there at the end of the phone. So I think we were very, very lucky to have that resource on tap, whereas a lot of other organisations weren't able to have that. So lucky, but also great that we had the prioritisation to say, let's just set up a wellbeing team. I mean, who can do that so quickly and make that decision and foresight? So that was a really, really positive move for the whole organisation. In terms of personally, payroll, as you said at the top, Greg, we do pays for 4 different hospitals, 25,000 frontline workers on aging systems. There's manual processes, there's paper everywhere. We didn't have the luxury of working from home. It was eerie that roads were quiet. We seemed to be the only ones in the building because we were in the admin building down the road. But it kind of made us a bit closer as well. And I remember a few of us leaders in payroll making a speech to everyone saying, we don't know what the future holds, but we need everyone to stick together and have a purpose. And your purpose is to keep the lights on. Your purpose is to keep paying frontline workers, because if we fall over, they will fall over. So we really gave them a good, like a mission to say, it's not doing it for yourself. It's doing it for those people on the front line. So giving them that purpose and sense of mission, I think went a long way at the start. I mean, 18 months is a long time to be wearing masks all day, every day, to be making sure we're socially distanced, and we've got different tea breaks, and it's been a long haul. And look, it hasn't been perfect, and nothing ever will. But I think setting that up at the start and setting people up to say, look, we're here as a team, we're here together. Let's make the most of it. There's no traffic. It's just us in the building. We own the joint now, so that I think went a long way.
That's brilliant, mate. And I know what you mean about eerie when it's kind of not on the roads. I know when in my neck of the woods, it was like dystopia. It was like the world had ended. There was not a car on the road. You can't hear anything. Honestly, it was a little bit crazy. But it's such a huge responsibility, mate. You know, paying 25,000 frontline workers. So obviously they're supporting the community in every possible way is a huge responsibility.
It is, and I don't like to think about it because it scares me. So, yeah, it's a massive responsibility, but it's not just on my shoulders. It's the whole team. It's nothing to do with me. It is a massive team effort every single day, not just on payday. Every single day is a massive effort from everyone within the team. So, I suppose when I do think about it, the responsibility, I will like to share the responsibility. I know it's on my shoulders, but I don't like to think of it like that because it does scare. It's a bit scary when you say it like that.
I know. It's a big job, mate. There's no doubt about that. I know you've got an amazing team to support you on that journey as well. So, mate, kudos to you, mate, and humble as always, my friend. Humble as always. Mate, if we look at yourself and being a bit more sort of introspective and probably a bit more reflective. I mean, I love your journey state and what you've achieved, especially in your more recent employ. But I'd love to understand, maybe talk about things that you're proud of, you know, real career milestones, you know, achievements that you're very, very, very proud of, but also keen to maybe share.
This one I didn't think or reflect too much on. I like to, I don't know. I like to learn from my mistakes and learn from the negatives, and it's been tough for me on this one because it's not like me to look at the wins and look at that's just like another day. It's like running a payroll. You don't see that as a win, but you pay 10 people wrong, you see that as a failure, and you got to learn from it and move on. So I think it's a bad payroll trait of not looking at your wins, of running 52 accurate pays every year. It's looking at the failures. But in saying that, you know, we've been successful in a lot of different areas, whether it's, I suppose we're talking about myself now too, aren't we? Yeah. This one's hard. Yeah. I suppose looking back, I thought it was a bad idea to leave the Royal Melbourne Hospital when I first started after 2 years, and I thought I was ready for the next step, and I didn't get an opportunity to move on and move up, so I actually left. I left and did another thing that was close to my heart, which was another SAP implementation.
Yeah.
And really, that was an Australian, New Zealand, small manufacturing company, you know, 1,000 people. Did that, implemented it, and kind of, well, what am I going to do next? And was just a bit bored of the small volume, and didn't really look at it as a win until I got the call from Royal Melbourne saying, actually, we think you're ready. We've actually got an opening for you. You want to come back? So I made the jump back and haven't actually looked back since. So some people say it's you know, how do you know it's greener on the other side? Well, you don't. And sometimes you got to take a risk, and you know, took the risk, but got that extra little experience and a couple of wins on the board that, you know, sometimes you do have to experience something different outside your organization to really bring back some knowledge and experience. to then be successful in moving up your career. And I think that's what really launched me into how I've moved up and through the ranks in Royal Melbourne.
And I think it is a leap of faith, isn't it, when you're changing roles or industries, especially as well, especially when you've been accustomed to one for a number of years. It's a huge leap of faith. I mean, you could do all the due diligence under the sun and read through the white papers and then check out the socials and have a look at people's websites and get referrals and recommendations, testimonials. But in the end, you don't know what the role is like until you're in that seat, in that room with your peers and leadership team, and then you can kind of feel the fabric and work out, well, actually, it is what I expected, or maybe it isn't. But yeah, more often than not, we see a lot of people, and I hear about a lot of people in my community who make the shift. And sometimes think, you know what, like you said, Matt, the grass isn't always greener. Might be taking a bit of a turn, bit of a U-turn, be like, right, you know what, I've enjoyed it, got some good experience, I've learned a lot about myself, I've upskilled, but I prefer to work in that particular environment. So
yeah, and the learnings there are really, don't burn bridges, because you never know if you may want to go back. So again, my key thing is relationships, and making sure they're strong and you're well connected, so that if something does happen, you leave for the right reasons, but then you join for the right reasons.
I agree. I totally agree, 100%, matey. And it doesn't matter what the circumstances are. In the end, you definitely do not burn that bridge. You exit, you say goodbye, you be humble, you be thankful, you be grateful, and you focus on a chapter that lies ahead.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Perfect, matey. Thank you for sharing that, mate. I really, really appreciate that. Some really, really good takeaways there. I'd probably say a bit more about, as we sort of wrap things up, a bit more around leadership. And obviously the people that we're in our community, there may be a handful that maybe are looking to get some tips around how they can break into leadership space. What advice or tokens, nuggets of gold, Matt, would you give to someone that is looking to be a future leader?
I do love a good nugget. It's I've got to be honest. A bit of barbecue sauce and well,
a little bit of Tabasco, mate. Chuck it on top.
My from personal experience as well, my first gold nugget would be, don't expect reward and recognition from the top, or don't expect it on your potential. You really have to show leaders what you are capable of before something may arise. So you might have been in the organization for 2 years and go, okay, where's my next step? Have you gone the extra mile? Have you gone above and beyond? Which I humbly won a finance above and beyond award, probably 2015, 2016, 2 years before I got my director role. So that is something where I thought, well, if you're showing senior leaders that you are willing to go above and beyond, then if you're patient and, as I said, have those great relationships, rewards will come. But you just can't demand them by just being, well, I've been here 2 years, I've done my service, where's my next step? Have you done those projects, and have you put your hand up and volunteered and joined those extra committees and had that extra experience and done something that's kind of out of your comfort zone? I joined some committees that's totally outside of finance and payroll, because I do want to have that experience and push myself and never stop learning. So, and showing that it's not just here for payroll or finance, it's here for the whole organization. And even doing something silly like a podcast with Method Recruitment. I mean, this is pushing the limits too. So
never heard of them, mate. Never heard of them.
So, there's a number of nuggets in there. I think that's more of a 6-pack or a 10-pack in there. There's that's a fair few good nuggets in there.
Yeah, No, I
Probably,
like that, mate.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
you make a really valid point, especially around the extracurricular stuff. Like if you want to get more involved, you can learn more about yourself, different areas. You can build relationships with people in the business that maybe necessarily that are not your immediate stakeholders or peers. All that stuff is so valuable, not just from a learning perspective, but also from a personal branding and internal PR perspective. People know that you have an active interest in the organization, the people in the groups, different teams. It's good for the personal brand.
and it doesn't go unnoticed. Someone may not mention it, your manager may not mention it, but trust me, it doesn't go unnoticed. And when the timing's right, with a little bit of luck as well, you'll get tapped on the shoulder and go, hey, I've noticed this and that, you should be going for this role.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's really important.
Mate, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, mate. We've covered a fair bit of ground. Like I said, more past, recent, and present, mate. So thank you so much, mate. Now, I'd like to finish up on a bit of a fun note, mate. Obviously, you've been beers on the balcony, and I have got a bit of a prickly question for you, mate. I want you to think about this one because it's absolutely pivotal that you get it right.
Ooh.
Now, I've got a bit of a hypothetical for you. For example, if I was to take you for a beer,
yes,
went to a pub, and they ran out of beer, bearing it will be a pretty crap pub if it did run out of beer.
Well, that wouldn't happen in Australia. So anyway,
definitely would not, mate. Definitely not. Maybe in the UK on occasion, mate. The Nag's Head, it might happen, mate. I don't know because it's been drank dry, or maybe the lorries can't come in to deliver the beer.
Brexit. That's it.
Brexit issue. Let's not get political. What would be your drink of choice, mate? If we also get you around and not beer related.
Well, I can't go for another James Bond reference because I've already gone there earlier in the episode. So, something that's also, my dad used to do, which I am now dad, sadly to say, getting older as a dad. A nice scotch, not whiskey, scotch.
Yeah.
At the end of the night, and he never allowed water or mixing or Coke or anything like that. Ice, yes, was allowed, but that's it. So 4 cubes of ice and a nice aged scotch.
Oh, very good, mate. Very, very good. I rate that very highly. If I was to pose a question to myself, mate, I probably wouldn't be too far off, if I'm honest, mate. I do love a good bourbon. I do like a good either bullet or a decent Maker's Mark.
Yes.
The one that's more aged, the 46. That's certainly my bag for sure, mate.
Not a Woodstock. I wouldn't see you as a Woodstock person.
No. I don't want a few tinnies here and there, mate. The occasion's got to be right. Matt, I cannot thank you enough for your participation, your insights, and your time, mates. It's been very, very valuable. So thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you very, very much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.